Before we can even begin to speak of the children, we must first confront the father. Because he was not just a man. He was a force of nature, a cultural earthquake that shifted the very bedrock of art celebrity and rebellion in the 20th century. Pablo Picasso. The name itself is a declaration of power. It speaks of a raw, primal, almost frightening talent that hadn't been seen before and hasn't been seen since. He was a titan who did not just paint. He devoured reality and regurgitated it in his own revolutionary image. His career spanned nearly 80 years, producing a staggering 50,000 works, paintings, sculptures, ceramics, drawings. He didn't just participate in art movements, he created them, from the haunting melancholy of his blue period born from the suicide of his friend, to the groundbreaking invention of Cubism with Georges Braque in the chaotic artist dens of Montmartre, where they shattered the single-point perspective that had defined Western art for 5 years. To the monumental black-and-white scream of Guernica, his furious response to the bombing of a Basque town that became the most powerful anti-war statement ever put on canvas. He didn't just reflect the 20th century. He held up a fractured mirror to its genius, its beauty, and its brutality. His creative energy was like the sun, blindingly brilliant, life-giving, and scorching to all who dared to get too close. And many, many people got too close. He famously said, "For me, there are only 2 kinds of women goddesses and doormats." He treated his wives and his many mistresses accordingly. He would find a woman, place her on a pedestal, make her the center of his artistic universe, and paint her obsessively capturing her essence. And then, when the inspiration faded, he would discard her often with a cruelty that was as breathtaking as his art. There was Olga Khokhlova, the refined Russian ballerina who became his first wife and was driven to the edge of madness by his affairs. There was Marie-Thérèse Walter, his young, athletic, golden muse, whom he met when she was just 17, the mother of his first daughter. There was Dora Maar, the brilliant surrealist photographer, his intellectual equal, whom he psychologically tormented and immortalized in his Weeping Woman series. And there was Françoise Gilot, the young artist, who was the only woman to ever summon the courage to leave him an act of defiance for which he would never forgive her. He was a genius, a rebel, a communist millionaire who lived like a king, a charismatic charmer, and a monster of egotism. He was a modern-day minotaur, and the women and children in his life were forced to navigate the labyrinth he built around himself. And when he died in 1973, at the age of 91, this godlike figure committed one final chaotic act. He, one of the wealthiest men in the world, left behind an empire of art property and gold worth billions by today's standards. But he didn't leave a will. What followed was a brutal decade-long war between his widow, his ex-lovers, and his 4 acknowledged children, a war that would end in suicide, devastating tell-all books, and a bitter winner-take-all fight for control of the greatest artistic legacy of all time. In this video, we will tell the complete tragic and ultimately triumphant stories of Paulo Maya Claude and Paloma the 4, acknowledged children of the great and the terrible Pablo Picasso. They were born to 3 different mothers, some in wedlock, some in secret. Their lives were a battlefield, shaped and scarred by the whims of a man who was both a creative god and a destructive monster. A father who gave them a world of unimaginable privilege and a lifetime of profound, soul-crushing pain. We will explore the heartbreaking life of Paulo Picasso, the tragic firstborn and legitimate son, who was systematically and cruelly crushed by his father's name and expectations, a tragedy that would tragically echo into the next generation. We will uncover the story of Maya Widmaier-Picasso, the secret daughter of his golden muse, who was immortalized in his most joyful art and became a crucial lifelong guardian of his work. We will delve into the incredible journey of Claude Picasso, the son who was publicly disinherited and cast out by his enraged father, only to fight his way back through the French courts to take legal control of his father's entire sprawling estate. and we will chronicle the spectacular rise of Paloma Picasso, the daughter who was also rejected, but who channeled her pain and her artistic inheritance into building her own global brand, becoming a design and fashion icon in her own right. To bring you this epic saga of art love and destruction, we have gone deep into the world of art history, read the explosive and emotional memoirs of his lovers, his children, and his grandchildren, and analyzed the landmark legal cases that defined his billion-dollar estate. This is the story of the human collateral damage left in the wake of a devouring, all-consuming genius. Number 4. Paulo Picasso, the crushed heir. He was the firstborn, the legitimate son, the handsome heir to the throne of the king of modern art. He was the beautiful, melancholic boy in his father's paintings, dressed as a harlequin, a Pierrot, a matador. He was the promise of a dynasty. So how did Paulo Picasso's life devolve into one of the great cautionary tragedies of the art world? A story of alcoholism, depression, and humiliating servitude, becoming the first and the greatest casualty of his father's fame. Born Paul Joseph Picasso in 1921 to Pablo Picasso and his first wife, the Russian ballerina Olga Khokhlova, Paulo's life began with what seemed like a storybook beginning. Picasso doted on little Paulo in his early years. In a series of now famous portraits, he painted his young son with a tenderness rarely seen in his other work. He captured his playful innocence, dressing him as figures from the Commedia dell'arte. Paulo was not just a son. He was an artistic subject, a beautiful prop in his father's ever-evolving creative world. For a while, the Picasso household in Paris was a picture of bohemian high society success. But life with Picasso was never truly peaceful for long. When Paulo was just 6 years old, his father began his secret scandalous affair with the 17-year-old Marie-Thérèse Walter in 1927. The discovery of this betrayal shattered the family. Olga, already struggling with the pressures of her husband's fame and volatile nature, was devastated. The once seemingly happy home split apart into a cold war of resentment and misery. By the mid-1930s, Olga took 14-year-old Paulo and left Picasso's immediate orbit, moving to the south of France. Paulo's stable childhood, if it ever truly existed, vanished. It was replaced by uncertainty, financial dependence, and a distant, increasingly critical, famous father. As a young man, Paulo struggled to find his footing. With his father's colossal fame looming over every aspect of his life, he never became an artist himself. He lacked the divine spark, or perhaps more accurately, he was never given the emotional oxygen to develop it. Instead, he ended up working for Picasso, not as a partner or an heir, but in a series of rather humble and often humiliating roles. Most famously, Paulo became his father's chauffeur and handyman. Though he was known to be a decent motorcycle racer in his youth, he spent much of his adult life driving his father around in a magnificent Hispano Suiza. This job, while keeping him physically close to his dad, came at a staggering psychological cost. According to family accounts, particularly from his daughter Marina Picasso, treated Paulo with a casual, devastating cruelty. He often insulted him in front of others, paid him a meager wage that kept him in a state of constant financial dependence, and made him wait for hours like a servant for his attention. It was as if Picasso, who despised his own father, was reenacting that toxic dynamic with his own son, expecting absolute servitude rather than offering fatherly warmth or guidance. Living forever in the massive, suffocating shadow of his father's genius, Paulo grew frustrated and defeated. He began drinking heavily. Despite these immense challenges, Paulo tried to build his own family. He married twice and had 3 children. With his first wife, Emilian Elote, he had 2 kids, a son, Pablo Picasso, born in 1949, and a daughter, Marina Picasso, born in 1950. But shortly after Marina's birth, his marriage fell apart under the strain of his alcoholism and financial instability. He later remarried to Christine Poplin, with whom he had another son, Bernard Ruiz-Picasso, in 1959. One might think that being Picasso's eldest son would come with immense fortune or fame. But Paulo's adult life was riddled with instability. He never found a lasting career or a sense of personal success beyond his demeaning role orbiting his father. Friends and family described him as a gentle, sensitive soul who simply couldn't escape the psychological prison of being Picasso's son. In 1973, Pablo Picasso died, and this event shook Paulo to his core. Not only did he lose the father he both loved and resented, but a storm of family conflict erupted over the massive will-less estate. Tragically, within months of Picasso's death, Paulo's own eldest son, Pablito, faced a horrifying and final act of cruelty from the Picasso court. Pablito, only 24, was so distraught at being barred from his grandfather's funeral by Picasso's widow Jacqueline Roque that he returned home and drank a bottle of bleach. It was a slow, agonizing death. He suffered for 3 months in a hospital before passing away. This horrifying incident completely devastated Paulo. Already battling severe depression and advanced alcoholism, his health collapsed. He died just 2 years after his father in 1975 at the age of 54. The cause was essentially the cumulative toll of alcohol and despair. Some reports say liver failure, others a broken heart. In reality, it was both. His life was utterly consumed and destroyed by his father's legacy. Paulo's life was a public tragedy, the story of a legitimate son destroyed by the glare of his father's sun. But at the very same time, his first family was disintegrating. Picasso was living another life, with another family hidden away in secret. A family that included a daughter who would experience a very different, and for a time, more loving side of the monster. Number 3. Maya Widmaier-Picasso, The Secret of Joy. While one family was disintegrating in public, another was thriving in secret. Born to Picasso's golden muse, the woman who inspired his most sensual and joyful art, Maya Widmaier-Picasso, was the hidden daughter, a source of light and fascination, immortalized in some of his most vibrant and celebrated paintings. How did she go from being a beloved secret to a central figure in authenticating and preserving his life's work? Born in 1935, Maria de la Conception, known to the world as Maya, was the daughter of Picasso and his young French mistress, Marie-Thérèse Walter. He had met Marie-Thérèse when she was just 17, famously approaching her on the streets of Paris and declaring, "I am Picasso. You and I are going to do great things together." She became his golden muse, the inspiration for some of his most famous and sensuous works of art, including the masterpiece, Le Rêve, the Dream. Their relationship was a secret, as Picasso was still legally married to, though long separated from, Olga Khokhlova. Maya's childhood was a clandestine, but by many accounts, happy and loving one. She was adored by her father, who was fascinated by her as a subject. He drew and painted her constantly. He created a famous series of portraits that show her playing with a doll holding a toy boat. Her face rendered in the bold, deconstructed style of his art, yet bursting with personality and paternal affection. These works are a world away from the formal, melancholic portraits of Paulo. They are filled with color, love, and a rare, uncomplicated joy. Because she was illegitimate, Maya had no legal standing in the Picasso family for decades. She lived a relatively normal life, marrying and having 3 children of her own. But she was always deeply, profoundly connected to her father's artistic world. She spent her life studying his work, compiling a vast personal archive, and becoming one of the world's foremost experts in authenticating his art. Her unique, almost innate ability to spot fakes based on an intimate, lifelong knowledge of his techniques, his materials, and his very soul made her an essential and revered figure in the art world. But her life, too, was touched by the family's inescapable darkness. 4 years after Picasso's death in 1973, her mother, the gentle Marie-Thérèse Walter, who had never loved another man and had lived her life in devotion to him, hanged herself in their garage. It was another tragic casualty of Picasso's all-consuming orbit. After her father's death, Maya joined her half-siblings Claude and Paloma in the landmark legal battle to have the illegitimate children recognized as legal heirs. Their victory changed French law and secured her a significant portion of the inheritance. Maya, who passed away in 2022, spent her life as a bridge between the private, loving man she knew as a child and the public artist the world revered. She was a faithful, loving guardian of his monumental artistic legacy. While Maya's life was defined by the art her father created in secret joy, the lives of his next 2 children would be defined by public warfare. A war sparked by their mother, the only woman who ever dared to leave him, and a war that would culminate in one of his own sons taking control of everything. This is the story of Claude Picasso. Number 2. Claude Picasso, the exiled son, the conquering administrator. He was the son of the only woman who ever walked away from Pablo Picasso. And as punishment, he and his sister were publicly disinherited, cast out and erased from their father's life. So how did Claude Picasso fight his way back from exile to take absolute legal control of his father's entire billion-dollar estate? Claude Ruiz-Picasso was born in 1947, the son of Picasso and the brilliant, beautiful young artist Françoise Gilot. Unlike Picasso's other muses, Gilot was his intellectual equal, an accomplished artist in her own right, who refused to be a doormat. Their relationship was a 10-year storm of passion art and intellectual battle. But in 1953, she did the unthinkable. She took their 2 children, Claude and Paloma, and she left him. Picasso was enraged. He was a god who had been abandoned by a mortal. His revenge was swift, total, and cruel. After Gilot published her best-selling and brutally honest memoir, Life with Picasso, in 1964, he declared war. He cut off all contact with their 2 children. He, the most famous father in the world, publicly disinherited them and refused to see them for the rest of his life, a full decade of silence. Claude, who had been pursuing a promising career as a photographer in New York, working as an assistant to the legendary Richard Avedon, was suddenly an outcast. For years, he and his sister were on the outside looking in at the kingdom that should have been theirs. But Picasso's death in 1973, without a will, changed everything. A legal war of epic proportions erupted over his colossal fortune. And Claude, then just 26 years old, stepped into the breach. He took the lead in a landmark and historically significant legal case. He sued the French state to have himself, his sister Paloma, and his half-sister Maya recognized as Picasso's legal heirs, challenging the discriminatory laws against illegitimate children. After a grueling 3-year battle, they won. The court's decision was monumental. It changed French inheritance law forever and granted the illegitimate children the right to a substantial share of the colossal estate. The battle wasn't over. The heirs spent years wrangling over the division of the tens of thousands of artworks. Finally, in 1989, Claude was appointed the legal administrator of the Picasso estate, the entity known as the Picasso administration. From that moment on, the disinherited son became the absolute authority on all things Picasso. He had final say over the authentication, licensing, and exhibition of every piece of his father's work. He became the fierce and often controversial gatekeeper of the Picasso empire, suing over forgeries and unauthorized uses of the name, even authorizing the use of the Picasso name on a Citroën car, which caused an uproar. He had become as powerful and controlling as the father who had cast him out. His story is an incredible saga of rejection, legal warfare, and ultimate absolute control. Claude's journey was a long, hard-fought battle for legal recognition and control of the legacy. His younger sister, who suffered the very same rejection, would find her own very different and perhaps more glamorous path to power, not by managing the Picasso brand, but by becoming one herself. Number 1. Paloma Picasso, the icon of style. She was the daughter cast out by the king, her very name a symbol of both artistic royalty and profound paternal rejection. So how did Paloma Picasso take that famous and cursed name and transform it into her own global brand, becoming one of the most successful and iconic designers of her generation? Born in 1949, Paloma Picasso's name, the Spanish word for dove, was made famous by her father's iconic Dove of Peace lithograph. Like her brother Claude, she grew up in the artistic crucible of her parents' relationship, only to be cruelly cast out and disinherited after her mother's memoir was published. This early trauma and rejection, however, seemed to forge in her a steely creative determination to create her own identity on her own terms. With her striking exotic looks, her pale skin, dark hair, and signature bright red lipstick, she became a prominent socialite and fashion icon in the 1970s. A muse to designers like Yves Saint Laurent and Karl Lagerfeld. She was a fixture of the glamorous, decadent worlds of Parisian high fashion and New York's Studio 54. But she was far more than just a famous face. She began her career designing costumes for avant-garde theater productions in Paris. Her talent for jewelry design was soon discovered, and in 1980 she began her legendary collaboration with the American luxury brand Tiffany & Co. Her designs were a sensation. They were bold, colorful, powerful, and unapologetic, a world away from the delicate, understated jewelry that was popular at the time. Her famous scribble and X motifs became instant classics. The Paloma Picasso collection for Tiffany became one of the most successful and enduring designer collaborations in history. From there, she built her own independent empire. She launched a signature perfume, Paloma Picasso, whose fiery red and black packaging became an icon of 1980s power dressing. She expanded into a line of accessories, eyewear, and home goods. Paloma's story is the ultimate triumph of self-creation. While her father was a brand, she became a powerful and respected brand in her own right. She didn't run from the name. She seized it, redefined it, and made it her own. While her siblings were tasked with managing, authenticating, or surviving their father's legacy, Paloma channeled her artistic inheritance into building a commercial and creative empire. It gave her the one thing her father's money could never buy: her own independent and unassailable power. Together, the lives of the Picasso children tell a powerful and cautionary story of survival in the orbit of a tyrannical genius. A tragic casualty, a faithful archivist, a legal conqueror, and a global brand. Each found their own way to live with the blessing and the devastating curse of the Picasso name. They are a testament to the fact that while genius may create immortal art, it often leaves a trail of very mortal human wreckage. This theme of the children of a 20th century artistic giant, a true revolutionary, is something we have explored before on this channel. In a previous video, we dove into the life and music of Paul McCartney, a genius of a very different kind. A man who with the Beatles brought joy and melody to the world. We explored his incredible journey from a working-class kid in Liverpool to becoming a global treasure. You can watch that definitive story by clicking the link right here. And his children had to find their own way in the shadow of a beloved global icon, a very different kind of legacy. We are currently working on a deep dive, Paul McCartney's 5 Children, the Untold Story. To explore that incredible musical dynasty, be sure to subscribe and have hit that notification bell. You will not want to miss it.